What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Dunkel Productions. The reason I am not super hyped at the moment is because we are about to talk about the Michigan Wolverines winning the Big Ten. Bama picking up a huge win in the SEC championship game. We'll talk OU and Miami coaching hires. We'll also probably dive into USC and LSU hires as well. We'll talk CFB top four and the matchups. We'll break them down. And then I will explain why I think college football is at the peak it's ever been right now with what is happening. But we decided to bring on a man that we brought on, I think, exactly 2 weeks ago now. We brought him back twice in 14 days. Mr. Dylan Rivard. Rivard, how you doing tonight, man?
What's up, Dunk? How you doing, dude?
I'm all
Thanks
right,
for
man.
having me.
I'm all right. I'm hanging in there. It's been a rough 9 days for me, but we're hanging in. We're all right, and we're looking forward to playing in the Rose Bowl, which is my favorite bowl game. So
That is a good bowl game. It's a little bit different of an early December than what you're used to, huh?
it is, but hey, I'm still enjoying it. It was fun to watch the games with all the fellas this weekend, and we'll obviously dive right into it, but. Rivard, I want to get your thoughts right off the rip. Michigan Wolverines win the Big Ten championship against Iowa. Me and you really saw this coming. I told you I think Michigan would win. I thought it would be closer than it was, but just give me your thoughts on that game. Well,
Yeah, I agree. I thought there was a potential chance for a let up, just because of how emotional that Ohio State game was. I think it's just a classic let up spot. I knew Iowa had a solid team, great defensively. I mean, people forget they were number two in the country at one point.
mhm.
Um, I knew their offense was shaky, but I knew that defense could keep them in the game versus anybody. So for a little bit, I was worried. Um, you know, that first part of the game was cool, but it was also kind of nerve wracking because of the gadget plays they were throwing in, the big chunk plays they were getting, and that's all they were getting. So it was nice to see that come alive. But then to watch them get shut down time in and time out for that first half was kind of concerning because again that defense that Iowa has can keep them in any game they're playing, and obviously Michigan just kind of took off. That Michigan defense, stellar, very stellar. So obviously I was incredibly happy. It was kind of one of those out of body moments after. It was kind of like, wow, I have never seen this before. I wasn't, 2004 was their last conference championship, and I think I became a Michigan fan in 2005. So it's just kind of one of those things where I've just kind of like sat back and I'm like, wow, like I've never seen this before. So it was kind of like, it was. I just kept saying like, this is awesome, like this is awesome. This is so cool to see. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I will say a couple things about Michigan. Can't believe I'm about to say some good things about them. I really gonna need some water after this. But Michigan, I mean, they came in there, they had a really good game plan. I like that they kind of threw some different things early um at Iowa because I thought going into the game that this was gonna be a defensive slugfest. Um because both defenses are so good. I mean, when you look at Iowa's linebacking core throughout that first half, they were just dominant. I mean,
I
Jack
agree.
Campbell, you got to give him credit. He's kind of the quarterback of that defense. They were making plays early, and they were doing pretty well against a very good Michigan running game with Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum. Which, man, as much as you hate to say it, as a Buckeye fan, Blake Corum, he's really good when healthy. And he made a huge play early in that game that I thought kind of got Michigan jump started in a way.
Hmm.
And then they just kind of ran away with it. I thought the big thing for me was David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, these dudes are dominant, and they are going to be very good NFL players one day. I think Aiden Hutchinson will probably be a top three, if not number one pick in this year's draft. And Ajabo is definitely making his way up the ranks with his performance the last 2 weeks. And like I said, Rivard, I'm not surprised I picked Michigan to win this game. I thought it'd be a little bit closer, but you got to credit Michigan. They have a really good team this year, and now they move on to the college football playoff where they're dealt with a really good team in Georgia. And I believe the Orange Bowl, which is I believe the last time Michigan has made it to a New Year's Six bowl. Am I correct on that? I think it was Florida State.
They, let's see, make me think a little bit. 2000, 2016, the JT was short. They ended up playing Florida State, I believe, in that
Orange
might have
Bowl.
been the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
That's a good question actually. I'm not.
I think it I
Yeah,
think it may have been Florida in
yeah,
20.
they had a stint where they played Florida State, and Florida like 3 or 4 years. Like
Yeah.
they were always playing a Florida team, whether it was Florida or Florida State. Because I remember that Florida State game, and that was with Delvin Cook, and he just tore Michigan up, and that was right after J.K. Dobbins tore us up. So it was just back to back weeks. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's cool to see them in contention.
And Jim Harbaugh finally gets the monkey off his back. I think a lot of people, we've talked about it on the show. Obviously, when you and Mangler came on, we've talked about, is Michigan going to let Jim Harbaugh go? And they've kind of stuck with him, and now that's paying off for them.
Yep.
Getting to this point now, and we'll see if that success can continue throughout these next few years here, and
Right.
even this year as well. But I think Michigan's got a great shot of beating Georgia. If Alabama ends up winning, I don't know if anyone's going to bet against Nick Saban after this weekend. So let's jump right into that. Uh, Rivard, I got to tell you, man, I had a lot of people that I knew riding Georgia and telling me Georgia's going to win this game. I had a couple people that I knew placed bets on Georgia to win this game. And the one thing I kept saying was, hey, don't forget, Alabama's coached by Nick Saban, who is probably the greatest college football coach of all time, if not one of them. Um,
Oh, yeah.
Alabama kind of destroys Georgia. I think it was
Oh,
what,
yeah.
a 17-point win for Alabama.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this one? I was very surprised that it was so lopsided in favor of Bama. I thought this was going to be a close, hard-fought game, but Alabama gets the dub. And what are your thoughts, Rivard?
Yeah. I want to look back at the Iron Bowl, when 4 overtimes, and it was just kind of, you're watching that game and you're kind of like, you're just waiting for Bama to turn it on. You're just waiting for 14 points in 5 minutes. You're just kind of waiting for it to happen. It just never really happened, and they squeaked out a win at Auburn, which, I mean, Auburn's 6-6. You're kind of, it's a rivalry game, but you look back at that, and it was kind of like, I was at my buddy's house watching the game, and he just like turned, and he's just like, Bama's going to win it all. And it was kind of like one of those like, yeah, it's just one of those wins that you have as a football team throughout a year that kind of just propels you. And it was like, maybe that's just enough to get them to where we're used to seeing them. And sure enough, next week played Georgia, and they ran away with it. I mean, they looked like an Alabama team that we're used to seeing. But I think the biggest thing that Saban was able to do, and it was his offense. It was they took Georgia's front four out of the game by just throwing it and spreading it out and throwing it. At one point, I think there was. I mean, they might have even finished with no sacks. I don't think anybody got a sack that game. Not even on Georgia, but on Bama too. It was just one of those spread it out and chuck it kind of games. And no matter where Bama's at, no matter who they have at receiver at this point, I guess maybe you could argue with Ohio State, but you're not going to have 3 receivers that are better than Bama's. Right now, I think you can argue Ohio State. But, eventually Bama is just going to be Bama, and they're going to take over. And that was just kind of one of those like, wow, shoot, Bama's back kind of a thing, and obviously Bryce Young had his Heisman moment there, just shackling that Georgia defense. I know we're not talking about Heisman's right now, but that's just one of those weird. It went before this week. this might have been one of the more open Heisman conversations I've ever seen. Like it could have been anybody. And then now after that week, it's like it's going to be one of the biggest landslides I think we're going to see with Bryce Young. Like I think people were just so desperate to see somebody go out there and do something cool, and Bryce Young did exactly that. So, hats off to him. But man, Bama, you can't hold Bama down for too long.
No, and I think the big thing that stood out to me and not a lot of people I think realizes Bama starts the game down 10-0. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, this is probably Georgia's year. And it was funny because I was watching the game with Jake, and he calls himself an Alabama super fan. He's kind of an Alabama bandwagon fan, but he was looking a little nervous because he was talking crap about Bama all day or whatever. And I look over to him and I say, "Hey man, I'm like Bama's gonna win this game." And he's like, "Dunkel, what are you seeing that I'm not?" And I'm like, "I'm just telling you, Bama's gonna win this game." I'm like, I got a feeling, and sure enough, I mean, their defense, Will Anderson, and that defense, you have to credit them. Um, Definitely held Georgia's offense intact, and Georgia tried a variety of different plays to try and get their guys in space, and Bama was just rallying to the football. And I mean, terrific job by Alabama's offense as well against that Georgia front four, which going into the game, we had a lot of concerns about Alabama's right side of that offensive line versus Georgia's front four. And
Yep.
really, Alabama's right side held up great. And that's one of the key reasons they were able to win this game. And they dominated for the better part of this one. And I think, too, what it says is really um, you just don't bet against Saban, especially in the SEC championship game. I mean, there are times when people go in and say, "Oh, this team's got a shot, that team's got a shot." I think the last team to beat Saban in an SEC championship game was the team that had one of the greatest college players of all time, Tim Tebow, on it, and Urban Meyer and all those boys on that Florida squad, which that team was very talented, but Georgia, are they ever going to get over the hump? I think this is their best shot. I think if they meet again in the national championship, it'll be something like this again. I don't think Georgia is better schematically than Alabama. I don't think they're better talent wise than Alabama. And I give the nod to Saban over Kirby any day of the week. So I
Right.
think I think it says a lot about Alabama, and obviously they are the prohibited favorites along with Michigan to be in the national championship game. And
Well, yeah. I mean, well, right now I think the spreads are I think Bama's minus 14 versus Cincy, and then Georgia's favored over Michigan 6.5 right now. I think so. I mean, we're
yeah,
looking at a possible SEC championship rematch in the CFB. But one thing I think about Georgia too, and I think a lot of people are writing them off, and I think I was one of them too. I was kind of like watching that game, and I'm like, is Georgia even good? Kind of one of those things. But I think Georgia is kind of, they seem like they're not very good offensively. And that's no surprise. I think they still have talent offensively, but it's their defense that's their, that's where they make their monies, on their defense. And when Bama took that multi-score lead, when was it, second quarter, maybe third quarter, whenever, you saw a Georgia team start to kind of panic, and they're not used to playing down. They're used to, playing off their defense and not taking too many chances downfield and just playing a good schematic football game. And Bama completely put them on their heels, so to speak, and threw them off their game plan. So I think, looking ahead at Georgia, Michigan, I don't think Michigan can blow Georgia out of the water like Bama can. So if you're going to play possession by possession with Georgia, that's a tough task to ask, because look, not everybody can just put Georgia on their heels, like Bama did. So, yeah, I don't think Georgia's done yet. And also, I do love George Pickens. He's back. He caught that one ball in that first quarter big 6'5", 220 receiver that can run. He's been out with a leg injury. I think it was a knee injury or something. Regardless, he's been out all season. He came back, showed a little flash of himself, and he's gonna have a month to get himself right. And I think he's a potential game changer for an offense that normally struggles, that doesn't have too many downfield presence.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so keep an
Well,
eye
I,
on
I
him.
think for me, when looking at these matchups when they were first presented, and I said this on, we did kind of like a hybrid Sunday show this weekend where we reacted to the top four, and we also talked on a Fallon, and I said on there, I'm like, the one thing I look forward to is the Michigan Georgia game because they're so similar,
Yeah,
and it's gonna be a line of scrimmage game. Whoever can win that is probably gonna win the game.
I
And
agree.
you're talking about 2 guys that have been under scrutiny and on, Jim Harbaugh and Kirby Smart under scrutiny to get their teams over the hump, and it'll be a very interesting, college football playoff semifinal. That's the game I'm really looking forward to watching.
Yeah.
I'll be honest too, part of me right now, Rivard, if you were to put me on a lie detector right now and I had to pick this game, I would probably take Michigan. Obviously, I'm not going to make my official pick yet, but if I had to pick it now, I'd take Michigan plus the 6.5 for sure. For sure, I'd take Michigan plus the 6.5. I'd probably take them to win outright too. Um,
Yeah.
because I mean, I don't know. And here's the thing for me too is like for Georgia, like they could come out super inspired after the loss to Bama, or
Mm-hmm.
they could just be like done.
Could be a wake up call, right?
Yeah, there's two ways that can go, and I think that early in the game is going to be important. I talk so much about it, but it's true. Early in the game in these playoff games are so important,
Mm-hmm.
so important,
Right.
especially in the red zone. Especially in
Yeah.
the red zone, got to
Right.
score touchdowns.
And
But
that's
go ahead.
go ahead. Nope, you're good.
No, go ahead. What you got?
Okay. No, I was gonna say that's where Michigan's been struggling is red zone. They've been struggling all year with their red zone offense, and it's kind of it's one of those things where you see them, they get to like the 30, the 25, 21, and you won't just want them to score because it's like once you get inside that red zone, for some reason they've been blanking. And I'm hoping they got over that hump, but if it comes down to that, that's scary. That's scary for Michigan.
So now, Rivard, I gotta ask you. So there's been a lot of talk about what the top four orders should be. I think they got the top four teams right. I'm not disputing that. I I I I clearly think that Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and Cincinnati all deserve to be in there. Do you agree with Alabama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, and Cincinnati number 4? Do you agree with it?
No, I don't. Um, I I think everybody had this take at one point before the rankings came out of like this is what it should be, but this is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Of Michigan 1, Bama 2, Georgia 3, Cincy 4. And I think and then they were talking about, they don't want a Georgia Bama rematch right away. They want to save that for the national championship game and so on and so forth. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. Um, Obviously, it's pretty convenient that it worked out this way for ratings and all that stuff to have Bama and Georgia not play the first round. Um, but I just find it really hard to put a team over Michigan. They took over that 2 spot when they beat Ohio State. And I mean, what have they done to give that up? Why if the number one team loses, why would someone else jump in? I don't care if it's Bam, I don't care who beat them or not. It's just, you can't tell me a 42-3 win in a Big Ten championship over a number 13 ranked Iowa that they should just stay put. Again, I think a lot of people had this pick, but I don't know. It would have been cool to see. It would have been cool to see Michigan won, obviously, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last time you were on, the SEC bias, it's real. It just
Oh
is.
yeah,
In
it
that
absolutely is.
in
Oh yeah,
that committee room, it's real. And to be honest with you, I think the committee is kind of undervaluing the Big Ten this year. I mean, you look at three top 10 teams right now in Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State, who played some really good football this season. I don't see why Michigan wasn't number one. I would have put them there, but I kind of had it in my head like, the committee's putting Bama number
right.
one.
You
That
knew it was
it's
going to happen. It's I wasn't surprised when I saw it, but it was kind
no,
of like maybe it'll happen, but nope. It's
but I mean, here's the thing too is like, um, I don't think Cincinnati is going to be a cakewalk by any means.
I don't think
Cincinnati's
so.
a solid football team. Um, and it's like for me, this 14 playoff I think is good for college football because it gets some new teams in there. Now, I'm not saying that next year, okay, it won't go back to Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and then another the 14,
Yeah,
like it has
you.
been the past
Yeah,
couple
right.
years. I'm not saying that can't happen, but what I'm saying is that you know this ain't a secret to anybody. There's about 5 to 10 teams in college football where if they're good, the sport's good. It's probably my list would be probably Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Miami, Oklahoma, Texas, and that's probably my list right
And
there.
Notre Dame, and then you
And
got it
Notre
right.
Dame, yeah. Yeah.
You got it dead right. That's exactly what I would have said. Yep.
But like, when these teams are doing good and you look at that list right there, these teams are, they're looking bright for sure. Obviously Miami and OU getting new coaches. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But there is a lot to look forward to in the sport of college football. And now you have a group of 5 teams getting a chance to play in the playoffs. So as college football as a whole, do you think it's in a good spot? I think it's in one of the best spots it has been in years because I think that there is two legitimate powerhouses now in the Big Ten and the SEC, and the Big Ten is definitely now comparable to the SEC in my opinion, based off of this season.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I think this is the this. I mean, I shouldn't say I think that I know this is the first year that Michigan finally got over that Ohio State hump, and that's the one thing that's kind of kept the Big Ten down is Ohio State is better than everybody, and they've showed that the last almost decade. 2014 is when they kind of picked it up, and then ever since then it's been the Ohio State show, and it's like, and that's obviously it's good for the Big Ten that you get a rep like that, in the college football playoffs, and Ohio State has won a national championship, and that's good. But I think now with Michigan finally getting over that hump, that does solidify two blue blood programs that can fight it out now, and hopefully those battles continue to go. And it doesn't, as much as I'd love to see Michigan win the next 10 in a row, it's also fun when that game is important. I mean, that's why it's called the game, because usually it has those implications. The winner goes to the Big Ten championship, the winner goes to the college football playoffs, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. I also think it's in a good spot too because of the transfer rule that they have, where you don't have to sit a year out when you transfer. I think that throws a wrench in a lot of things, and I think that evens out a lot of playing fields with your top programs and then your second tier, third tier programs. Um, I mean, you look at a team like Michigan State. Between last year and this year, I think they have over 40 transfers. I could be wrong. That number just sounds asinine, but I'm pretty sure they have over 40 transfers on their team, and they were a top 10 team all year, or around top 10 all year. Just stuff like that where you can, there's a lot of power in the players' hands right now, and I think that makes for good football. It makes for good viewing. Obviously with the name, image, and likeliness, with the players getting paid a little bit too. Like that's obviously good. I think that transfer rule is a good counter to the NIL because I thought the NIL was going to create a pre or a 30 team semi-pro league where there's literally probably 20, 30 teams that can possibly pay players enough to make, kids go there. But I think now that kind of evens out that first, second, third tier where, you look at a guy like Spencer Rattler. I mean, he might, what if he goes to, a second tier team, maybe not Ohio State, Bama, um, Oregon, Michigan, or maybe he goes to a team like, Michigan State. I hope not, but or a team that is kind of second tier, but could all they need is or a Wisconsin or somewhere like that where all of a sudden you kind of just mix in those tiers, and I think that's good for college football. So
And I'll throw this out to you. I don't think it's crazy if I tell you this, that the 4 teams in the playoff next year, 2 of them from the SEC, Alabama and Georgia, and 2 of them are from the Big Ten, Michigan and Ohio State. I don't think that's crazy because I think we're getting to that point now where the committee's going to say, okay, like the Big Ten has some competition. I think you look at a Wisconsin team that's going to bring back a lot of guys. They're going to be back in the mix next year. Michigan State probably going to be there again. Mel Tucker doing great things there. Michigan and Ohio State are obviously probably going to be back there again. Penn State, I think they're going to figure it out with James Franklin, especially considering I think they have the best recruiting class either this year or the year after. If I told you today the top 4 teams next year, let's say Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, that seems legitimate to me, doesn't it to you?
it could. I think it does. I think the only way that can happen is if Michigan and Ohio State go into that game undefeated.
Yep.
And I mean, if Michigan is undefeated and Ohio State's undefeated, they're both top 5 teams, probably top 3 teams. Like they carry that weight. They carry that much weight,
Yep.
on the national stage. Where if you have a 12-0 Michigan team or 11-0 Michigan team, they're going to be top 3, probably top
Yep.
5. Same with Ohio State. And then as far as Georgia and Bama go, you can't even say that they need to be undefeated if they play in the SEC championship game because I think if there wasn't to ever be a team that has 2 losses, it's going to be an SEC team like a Bama or even Georgia. So I mean, I think that's very real and that's very possible. I think that would piss a lot of people off if they did have that. But at the same time, if all 4 of those teams are playing like they should, I mean, there's no reason that can't happen.
Right. And here's the thing too is like I think that with Michigan and Ohio State, I mean, if you tell me next year, they both go into the game undefeated, I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised. And I think we've obviously talked about this. I believe on the first edition of the game preview, we talked about how all the marbles, all the marbles for the game are there,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what it's about in college football. And I think for me, like you look at Michigan and you say to yourself, okay, they've finally figured it out. They've finally gotten over that hurdle. And you look at Ohio State, I mean, they're one of the youngest teams in college football. Like their roster isn't really developed. And
Yep.
here's the thing too, is that if you would have told me Ohio State is 10-2, a top 7 team, and makes the Rose Bowl after that Oregon game, I probably call you crazy.
I was just gonna say you brought up a huge point because the committee dodged a huge bullet this year with that Oregon game. Because if you take away that Oregon game and you have CJ Stroud, who that's not his first start, that's not his first play, you give him a couple games and then he plays Oregon, Ohio State beats Oregon.
Oh
If you
yeah.
take a one-loss Ohio State team against Michigan, they had to put them over Cincinnati. And could you imagine the uproar if Ohio State had only had 1 loss instead of 2?
Yeah. Well, here's
Who would
the
have
thing.
to pick between undefeated Cincy and one loss Ohio State to the number one team in the country or number
Yeah.
two team in the country? I
Yeah.
think the committee dodged a huge bullet with that because if they wouldn't have put Cincinnati in undefeated, that would have created chaos throughout the world. Okay, the nation, not the world, but yeah, you know what I
And
mean.
I mean, honestly, if you look at it, if Michigan or Ohio State only lose to one or the other this year, there's no shame in losing to a top
Right,
6 team in the country that's been
right,
consistent all year. There's no shame in that. And another thing that I always talk about with these group of 5 teams is that they got to play the big dogs, and I give Cincinnati credit for scheduling a team like Notre Dame
right.
because when you're a group of 5, you got to schedule the big dogs because Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, they're going up against the best of the best in their conference. I mean, they just are week in and week out. That's how it goes. And I mean, you look at Ohio State. 4 of their last 5 games were against teams ranked in the top 25 when they played them, and 2
Yep.
of them were ranked in the top 7. Like they're just they play so much good competition, and yeah, I do agree with you. I think they dodged a real bullet. And here's the thing: is I made the case. I made the case that if Cincinnati would have lost, I would have given the nod to Ohio State over Notre Dame.
Yeah, that would have been a cluster too. I think the committee, ranked Notre Dame 5, Ohio State 6. So I think they would have put Notre Dame in, but that would have been something too. Because again, just that Oregon game really threw off. Well, that didn't throw off Ohio State's chances because if Ohio State would have beat Michigan, they'd be number one or number two.
Yeah.
But that young Ohio State team that played Oregon was not the same team that finished the year. You know, so.
Well, and
But I
that
think with Group of Five too. I think not only do you have to schedule a good team or two and then go undefeated. You have to be good for 2 straight years at least. You look at Cincy last year, and I think they were a one-loss team, maybe a two-loss team, but they were consistently in the top 20, top 15 throughout the year, or at least the last few weeks. So then they came in pre-ranked. I want to say 8. That for some reason that number sticks in my head. I think they were pre-ranked somewhere around the top 10, and then to continue that by going undefeated. That just kind of keeps throwing you in the mix, as opposed to starting the season unranked. And then all of a sudden you're kind of like, oh, look at this team from Cincinnati. They look pretty good this year. No, we knew they were going to be good this year. So therefore, you got to be good for 2 years in a row and go undefeated if you're going to make the college football playoff as a group of 5 team. And that's exactly what Cincy did. But
yeah, and I mean, I think too part of it is like for me, like I like Cincinnati getting a shot. Do I think they lose to Bama? Yeah. I don't think they're there yet. Um, it wouldn't surprise me if that game's within 17 points, though. I
yeah,
mean,
I think going back to your statement before about the start of the games being important because if Alabama goes out there and hangs 21 the first quarter,
yeah,
it's going to be mercy rule. It's going to be 50-0, 50-10, 50, whatever. But if Cincy can go ahead, start that game off right, play well, play good defense, play within themselves, and keep this close throughout the whole game, I think there's a chance it could be a possession or two game. But Alabama also has that firepower to just say, you know what, I'm going to go put 21 on you right now. And if that happens, good luck.
so let's jump in. We obviously had. I think college football is in a great place right now. Um, But let's talk about some teams that made some moves. Oklahoma hires Brett Venables as its new
Yep.
head coach. I called that about 2-3 weeks ago on the podcast with Burback. I said I think Brett Venables is the guy for Oklahoma, and
Yeah.
I got that one right. So, but
Right.
what are your thoughts on that hiring? A
I'm
lot of people in Norman are excited. There's a lot of buzz down there today, and what are your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, I think it's not a shocking move, but if you go back a couple years ago, Brent Venables had no interest in being a head coach. He wanted to be a coordinator. He liked being the D coordinator. He's damn good at it. But it seemed like he expressed that he had no interest in being a head coach. So, when those rumors came up about Venables going to OU, obviously, he coached a little bit at OU. It was just kind of like, I don't think he wants to, kind of one of those things. But heck, he decided to go over there, and that's a great hire for OU. That's good. That's a good hire for OU, I think. Obviously, that's heartbreaking for if you're an OU fan that you lost Lincoln Riley. OU is technically deemed to be a destination job, and just obviously not. But I think they did very well with Brent Venables. That's a good, and it'll be interesting to see now too with his defensive background and him being more of a defensive coach. How that plays in the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is kind of changing on us a little bit as far as they're becoming more defensive. You look at a team like Baylor and even Oklahoma State and now OU, where defense is becoming more of a priority. You're not seeing your typical 64-61 shootouts every single week, So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But yeah, I think they did a very good job with getting him to Norman because I think it was only a matter of time before he was going to leave, and I think great hire.
Yeah, I think Brett Venables was a home run hire for OU, and like you talked about, it's weird. The Big 12 is changing before our eyes, and for me, we obviously previewed the Baylor Oklahoma State game, and I talked about how, I think this is going to be a more defensive game, and I can't believe it was coming out of my mouth while talking about a Big 12 game,
Right.
because it's like Big 12, I think back to the Hollywood Brown game for Oklahoma where it was like 63-58 in Bedlam, and
Right.
like back in the Geno Smith days where West Virginia was putting up 60 a
Virginia.
game, and
Right.
Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray putting up 60.
On Georgia in that semifinal game. Remember that Georgia OU game was like in the 50s?
Yes.
I didn't even touch 60 with Baker. Yeah, that was right. I mean,
Big
for a
12
while
is
it was just looked at as like, okay, it's just 7-on-7 football, play a little defense, whatever, and you'll beat them. And it's starting to turn on us a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this is a good hire. I think Oklahoma's an A program. They're one of the teams I mentioned in the 8 to 10 range of teams
Yep.
that I think make college football what it is. So it's a great hire for them. Now let's talk about Miami. Now, Rivard, I've been hearing from the U fans since 2001. Every single year, the U's back, baby. This is our year. We're coming back. Hire
Turnover
Mario
chain.
Cristobal. What are your thoughts on that? Coach Cristobal going down to the U.
Yeah,
What are your
I,
thoughts?
I was very surprised by that. Just not only because of the success that Oregon's having this year and they've had the past 2 years, but with how well he's recruiting California and how good his recruiting classes have been the last few years. And it's Oregon. I mean, Phil Knight. You have Nike in your back pocket. You have all of these. You have Nike in your back pocket. Like that's Phil Knight. That's his university, and obviously that's his alma mater is Miami. So I think that's the only job he probably would have left for. But I think Miami is just not in a good place right now, and I don't think they have been since Ed Reed was there. Like I mean, it's been so long. Back with the Miami boys, I don't know. It just it hasn't been a good job in a long time. I mean, they've had some good years here and there, but they're just it's just not the Miami that you're used to seeing from, back in the days with all, those early 2000s teams and those late 90s teams. But maybe that's attractive to Cristobal. Maybe he wants that challenge. Maybe he wants, I mean, obviously we talked about that's his alma mater, it's an attractive job to him, I'm guessing, so good for him. I'm if he wants to be there, I'm glad he's going there because I don't know, it's his alma mater. Like he has ties down there. So
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting how Cristobal recruits because I mean, when you look at college football, I mean, there's a lot of programs that are currently better than Miami right now. There's a lot of programs that are better positioned to make a college football playoff and win a national championship than Miami right now. And I think it's going to take Coach Cristobal a little bit of time. I don't think this is something where like it's an LSU with Brian Kelly where you go in there, it's going to maybe be a year or two and then you're good, or a USC or someplace like that because you hasn't been good like that. And personally, I think it's a great move for Miami. Bring one of their own back there, see what they can do. Um,
the
I,
guy can obviously coach, so that's a hell of a hire for Miami. If you're looking at from where they're at right now to
yeah,
getting you
yeah,
know a coach like that.
they're definitely in a position to get better. I just don't know how much better they'll get. Like for me, Oklahoma, like I think Venables is a home run hire. I think Cristobal is like a double hire. Like he's a good solid coach, but the U just hasn't been that good. And I mean, they've brought different people in there. They've, obviously recruited decently over the past couple of years, and it
Yeah,
just never really seems to stick. But it'll be interesting, especially considering they're in a ACC now with a motivated Clemson after this year's rough performance from the
yeah,
Tigers.
right.
Um,
You also got to look at from the Miami standpoint and him. Look at where Florida State and Florida are right now. If you're going to coach at Miami or if you're going to coach at Florida State, you're worried about those three schools. If you're Miami right now, you just made a heck of a splash with Cristobal. Florida State's just, I mean, Florida State's Florida State right now. Florida obviously came off this year. Um, it's they hired, was it Sonny Dykes? Is that who they hired? Florida.
Billy Napier.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It was Billy Napier. That's right. But I think that's a bigger splash. And if you're a kid from Florida, you're thinking, huh, why not go to Miami? Why would I go to Florida or Florida State? Why not stick it? Why not stay in Miami? So maybe that's another thing that might actually, um, bring Miami some luck in the next year or two or three and down the road, to jumpstart that program.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it'll be really interesting. But Rivard, thank you so much for joining me tonight, man. It's always a good time talking to you, catching up,
Oh yeah,
talking some college football for sure. I think we're gonna do some type of college football picks show, so we'll definitely get you on for that.
interesting. I'm game.
We will have a whole cast of characters for that one. Um, I'm gonna try and get some different type of fans on here too. I'm gonna try. My goal is to try and get a fan from every single team that's in the playoff
Okay.
on here. That's the goal. I don't know many people from Georgia. Georgia's gonna
Or
be the problem.
or Cincy. You have to actually go to Cincinnati to find a guy that's a Cincy fan.
Nah, I know a couple Cincy guys.
Okay.
See, if Ohio State was in here, that'd be easy for me.
Right. Well,
Michigan too. Like
you
those are.
already got your guy from Michigan, Coach Mangle.
I don't know, man. You're a little bit ahead of Mangle right now. Mangle's kind of ripping on me the past few days, Rivard. You were you
Did
were
you
you were
expect anything else, though? Did you expect anything
no,
else?
no, no.
Right.
Dude, honestly, I expected him to show up at my house and say something, considering he knows where I live. So the fact that I only got a text, I was a little surprised.
Right. Yeah.
But I will say
Right.
I do respect the humbleness out of you, and I did text and congratulate you after both games. Letting you know, hey man, you've been a diehard fan, you've been through it all, and I respect the hell out of you for it. But Rivard, you have a great night, man. Thank you so much for joining us, and everybody, make sure you guys comment, like, hit the bell notification, subscribe if you haven't already. couple people on our survey said they haven't subscribed yet. Don't know why, but let's do that. Peace out, everybody.